Okay, so we will start off with having some introduction to various cybersecurity concepts that really are foundational for let's just say any person who is starting on the security side of things. Okay, so I kind of assume not everyone is going to be from a security background. Maybe you might have worked on a couple of products, some solutions here and there, but I still consider everyone to be, you know, maybe on the various other sides of IT, but not really security, and are trying to jump into the security side of things. Okay, so going through some of these topics will really help you understand some of the terminologies. Okay, so that when we are back to back using them, when we are dealing with other solutions, other products, you're not getting too much confused. Okay, so we'll be looking at those foundations. You will learn the difference between things like cybersecurity threats, vulnerabilities, exploits. We will also look at some common cybersecurity threats as well as common software and hardware vulnerabilities. You will also learn about the details about the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the differences between them. Okay. And we will also discuss different cloud security and IoT security threats as well. Okay. It is very, very essential nowadays. Lots of IoT, okay, so products. Cloud, everyone knows cloud security is, or cloud is on the boom. Security never leaves that as well. And towards the end, I'm also going to go over a little bit of digital forensics and incident response as well. Okay, so that you understand the concepts. Okay, not really if you're going to be directly involved with digital forensics, but in case you have to talk or deal with those teams, you basically will have an idea what really goes into it. Okay, so that's quite an extensive summary of things that we will do. I mean, obviously not today. I mean, we won't cover everything today, but then that's going to be um, the agenda for coming couple of weekends. Okay, so cybersecurity. Okay, now we have been hearing the term, or everyone would be hearing the term cybersecurity. What really is cybersecurity? Okay, I mean, obviously everyone knows we are living in an interconnected world, right? Where both individual and any actions that that individual takes has the potential of either doing or having a good result or having a bad result. Okay. Now, when we say cybersecurity, cybersecurity is all about protection. Okay. Protecting assets, protecting data. Okay. So each one of us needs to be protected. Infrastructure, be it your home network, be it your office network, right? Be it, let's say, a hospital network, airport network, etc., etc. Okay. Within cybersecurity comes also protecting the economy as well as the country from any sort of harm that can result from, let's just say, any intentional misuse, compromise, or any other destruction of information or information systems, right, which comprises the whole IT infrastructure or critical infrastructure. Okay, So when I say assets is nothing but anything that has value. Okay, so you and I are an asset as well. Okay, your laptop, your mobile device, your car, everything is an asset. Okay, so that's one objective of cybersecurity, to protect the assets plus any data. Okay, and that data can typically be anything for that matter. Okay, your name, your date of birth, credit card numbers, passport numbers. Okay, within an organization, there are lots of confidential data, right? Network diagrams, for example, um, quarterly financial reports, source codes, right? For organizations who are into application development. All of that is data. Okay, so cybersecurity aims to protect. Plus, another aim of cybersecurity is to reduce risk. Okay, reduce risk from, let's just say, any sort of data breach. I'm pretty sure everyone would have heard about, in the recent years, a lot of big organizations had gone through data breaches. Okay, attackers, hackers were able to infiltrate the organization and they were able to extract customer data, millions of terabytes of data, or millions of customer data, end user data was extracted, right? Facebook got hit once, Meta, okay. Zomato was hit in the recent years as well, wherein a lot of customer data was extracted. So the goal is to protect from data breaches, okay, reduce the risk for the data breaches. Now, the risk is not just for the data breach, but it is also the risk for the entire organization. Okay. Due to any of the different business activities that various individuals go through on a daily basis for an organization. Okay. Business activities that rely on nowadays a lot of digitization. Okay. So it's very important for any organization to develop a nice, robust cybersecurity program. That is very crucial for any organization. Okay. Cybersecurity, I mean, in the earlier days, cybersecurity used to be something that we used to punt it on the IT team. Okay, that anything with respect to security, adding access list, at the very basic, adding access list, disabling ports, disabling services, that would be done by the IT team. And everyone used to think that that's cybersecurity. Okay, but cybersecurity is not that easy, first thing. Plus, it is not something that you can just punt it on the IT team alone. So everyone that works in the organization, everyone needs to be involved to make sure that that cybersecurity program is successful, and that includes the board of directors as well, not just individual people. Okay. Now, another term that some of you might have heard is infosec or information security. Okay. It's short for information security. So many individuals confuse traditional infosec with cybersecurity. Okay. They are essentially the same, and essentially they're not the same as well. Okay. So let me help you understand that. So in the past, traditionally, Organizations used to have infosec programs and policies, okay, that were technically designed to protect the assets and the data, okay, typically within the organization itself, okay. So this used to be to protect within the org, okay. Now, this part within the organization is no longer relevant, right? Because everything is hybrid now. Everything has moved onto the cloud. So the assets, the people working, they're not just sitting on-prem, right? They're not just sitting in the organization or confined within the organization. Same thing goes about the data, the services, applications, whatever. Okay. So since this is no longer the case, organizations are no longer self-contained. Organizations are also paying the price of that interconnectivity that I mentioned. Okay. Previously, all the services, servers, applications, data, it used to be in their private data center. Very easy for organizations to protect it. Okay. Now, when we have taken that data, those applications, those services, and we have moved to the cloud, which is essentially just using someone else's infrastructure or hardware. Okay. Now, previously, when the users had to access those, they would access just within the private data center. Now they are going over the internet and accessing the data in the cloud. Okay, so this interconnectivity that has happened, it has also increased the exposure to attacks. Okay? Every organization nowadays, regardless of the size of the organization or no matter what their geographical location is, they are a potential threat. And they are a potential, no, they're not a potential threat. They are a potential target, for example. Okay, so we have now transitioned from here to here. So cybersecurity is the process or the framework of protecting information by doing three things. This protection that I mentioned, okay, it does it by doing three things. First is proactiveness, prevent. Okay, that's proactiveness. Next is detect. If, for example, there is an attack that might have happened against an organization, is the organization self-sufficient enough to detect that attack and obviously respond? So these are your three pillars that basically make up a cybersecurity program for any organization. Okay, so cybersecurity programs recognize that organizations must be vigilant, they should be aware, they should be resilient, and they should be ready to protect and defend every incoming and outgoing connections, as well as any organizational data, no matter where that data is stored. Okay, so protecting the data wherever it is stored, whether it is transmitted or whether it's being processed. Okay, so data at rest, which is when the data is being stored, let's say in hard disks or disk arrays, whatever, or data in transit, while the data is moving, while the data is being transmitted. Plus also when it's being processed. Okay, so do this and protect and defend connections, incoming and outgoing. Okay, so cybersecurity programs and policies now expand, but they kind of take inspiration and they kind of build on top of traditional information security programs. Okay, but they do a lot more than traditional infosec used to do. A couple of additional things which cybersecurity programs also do: risk management, like I said, reducing risk. Okay, so cyber risk management. Okay, things like maybe I would say at a very basic level, doing vulnerability assessments or vulnerability scans. Okay, patch management. Classify that as risk management. Second is threat intelligence. Very crucial nowadays. Threat intelligence and information sharing. Okay, incident response. I'll just write IR. And how do you deal with third party? How do you deal with third party software, third party hardware? So, for example, if your organization uses Zoom, that is third party software. Okay? Your cybersecurity program needs to mention and needs to be aware that Zoom could possibly have vulnerabilities, right? Zoom could cause some sort of a risk in the organization. So what do you really do about it? Okay, so third party is very essential. So this essentially is what cybersecurity programs and policies can expand into as well, in addition to whatever I mentioned. Okay, now there are several cybersecurity frameworks which organizations can adapt, can use, which give them guidelines of how cybersecurity programs and policies should be. Okay, so you as an individual or an organization doesn't have to do everything from scratch. Okay, there are lots of frameworks, lots of organizations out there who or whose job is solely to create frameworks, to create templates, let's just say. Okay, and those templates can then be used by organizations depending upon what they want to do. Okay, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you must have heard some of these frameworks. Some of you might not have heard about these frameworks at all. So one of them is NIST CSF. Okay, so NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. Okay, this is a well-known US-based organization that is part of US Department of Commerce. Okay, it is a federal agency. Okay, and the mission of NIST and the job that NIST does is to develop and promote measurements, standards, and technologies to enhance cybersecurity. So NIST CSF or NIST Cybersecurity Framework, it is a collection of different standards and best practices to help organizations manage cybersecurity risks. Okay, so this, since it's by a US-based organization, NIST is typically very common and used a lot in US. Okay, and NIST currently has more than 500 cybersecurity related documents that are available free of cost that can be downloaded, accessed, and used by organizations. And these documents, they are for different areas of cybersecurity. So for example, they would have a document which will give you best practices about incident response. How can an organization create an incident response plan? What goes into it? Okay, how do you build teams? How do you train them, etc., etc. They would have for things like access control. How do your firewall policies should look like? Okay, nowadays we are dealing with a lot of zero trust. What does zero trust look like? What does MFA should look like? As a solution, and what best practices. So these are generic guidelines which can be applied to any product, any solution, does not matter. So NIST has a couple of different types of such guidelines. One is called as FIPS, Federal Information Processing Standards. Okay. Then the very common ones that a lot of you should access, should read through are SP 800 series documents, special publication. Okay. So you as an individual, you don't need to learn these documents. Okay. You don't really need to mug up what's the content, but you should really know what NIST CSF is. Why do you need it? Okay. Why FIPS? What is Special Publication 800? What is Special Publication 1800? Okay, what do they cater to? What are the primary areas of cybersecurity within an organization that these documents cater to? Okay, and then obviously as you're implementing, as you're deploying, as you're maybe managing cybersecurity programs or environments, you can quickly back and forth reference and see what guidelines are there. So for example, let me just mention a very basic guideline: password policies. Okay, so NIST has a document which highlights password policies. What should an organization's password policy look like? How many minimum characters? How many special characters? How many repetitions should be allowed, etc., etc. Okay, so all you have to do is you have to adapt it. Okay, and it's not like that you have to get some permissions or something from anyone. These documents are available free to download. They are publicly accessible. Okay, so these documents, they really provide you everything that you need from implementing access control all the way to something like wireless security and everything in between. Okay, so these NIST publications, they truly are, let's just say, a treasure of valuable and practical guidance that organizations can incorporate, okay, when they're thinking about implementing cybersecurity policies or programs. Okay, now this is from a US perspective. Okay, a lot of US organizations will adopt NIST. Okay, now what about the rest of the world? Comparison to NIST, for the rest of the world, there is ISO. I'm pretty sure everyone have heard about ISO standards, right? ISO standards are for, let's just say, every industry, or there are standards for every industry, for manufacturing, engineering, etc., etc. Okay, we are just going to deal with and look into the security standards. So ISO is basically, again, it's an organization that develops standards, and they have developed more than 13,000 international standards on various topics or various subjects. For example, security, cybersecurity, passenger safety, okay, manufacturing industries, things of those nature. From a security perspective, the standard that you should be interested in is ISO 27000, or you could sometimes will see it written as ISO 27K. Okay, and in here there are 6 documents: 27,001, 27,002, 27,003, all the way up to 27,006. Okay, and the main goal behind ISO is to provide recommendations on how an organization can establish, implement, operate, monitor, maintain, improve cybersecurity program. Okay, so ISO calls it ISMS, Information Security Management System. Okay, so it gives you how you can build an ISMS. Okay, what should be the different codes of practice for ISMS? How do you implement ISMS? Okay, how can an organization monitor using various metrics? How do you define risk management? Okay, so I've mentioned 27,001 to 27,006, okay, primarily. But in all, there are more than 20 documents in this 27,000 series. Okay, and there are a lot more under development currently as well. And this framework can be applied, so either NIST or ISO, it can be applied to public, private organizations of any size. Okay. ISO says a very simple thing. We are giving you recommendations, and these recommendations are for people who are looking to implement and maintain security in their organization. Okay. Now, what you use to implement that security, so let's just say they say that firewall needs to be there. Okay. And firewall needs to be present in these parts of the network. Okay. If you are maybe, let's say, a banking organization, right? Your firewall placement and a firewall design might look different than a healthcare environment. Okay. So ISO might say that, hey, a firewall needs to be there. This is how the policies need to be defined for the firewall. Now, these are generic guidelines. Okay. Now, what firewall you implement and you purchase and you implement in the organization, it typically really depends upon a lot of different things. Okay. CapEx, OpEx, budget, etc., etc. Okay. But the goal is that these standards are not locked down by or for any particular security vendor. You want to do Cisco, you're free to use Cisco. Okay. You want to do Fortinet, you're free to use Fortinet. You want to do Palo Alto, you can do Palo Alto. Okay. It's going to be your job as a security professional to be able to translate the text that is mentioned in the ISO and relate it into or translate it into the policies that you actually implement for the environment. Okay. So these two are um, these standards or frameworks. Okay. And there are lots of other frameworks as well. Again, depending upon what sort of an environment that you are really in. Okay. So for example, there is SOC 2. Okay. Service Organization Control Type 2. This is a cybersecurity framework, basically, that can help let me just say, that can help vendors and partners, organizations to securely manage data, client data. Okay, so I'll give you an example. AWS or Azure or GCP or OCI, right? Public cloud platforms. A lot of organizations, when they're using these platforms, they are storing data. They could be employee data, they could be client data, et cetera, right? Now, obviously, you would want to protect that data. So you as an organization, when you're using AWS or Azure or GCP, and when you are storing your data in these platforms, you basically would want the cloud vendor to be able to protect that data. Okay. Now, how do you know that whether the cloud provider is efficient in that or not? You look at whether the cloud provider implements some sort of a framework or not. Okay. Obviously, the cloud provider is not going to give you access to their infrastructure to go through and see how they are doing the protection. Okay. It's through such frameworks. So if anyone here deals with any sort of cloud providers or anything, when if you have done the contracts and everything within the contract, if you ever going to notice, or when you go to your dashboard and everything, when you're managing your cloud resources, there would be a mention of that particular cloud provider being SOC 2 compliant or not. Okay, so SOC 2 is one of the toughest security frameworks to implement. Okay, so SOC 2 specifies more than 60 compliance requirements, and SOC 2 does extensive auditing as well. Then only they give this certification. Okay, and if let's say someone has and they say that we are SOC 2 compliant, then basically means that they have implement strong controls to protect client data. Okay, so you're going to see SOC 2 for such cloud providers. You're going to see SOC 2 compliance in the finance and the banking sector a lot as well. Okay, then we have another very famous framework or compliance for hospital environments, HIPAA. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This is a cybersecurity framework that is required to be implemented within healthcare organization, hospital, clinics. And HIPAA defines how would you implement controls for securing and protecting the privacy of health information. We call it PHI, Protected Health Information. Patient name, patient records, their diagnosis, medical reports, investigation reports, all of that is confidential data, okay, that just belongs to the patient. Similarly, information about the other hospital and clinic staff's doctor's information, right? Their name, date of birth, their medical registration information, etc., etc. Okay, so all of your healthcare environments, they typically strive to protect the PHI and they have to implement HIPAA. If you don't comply with HIPAA and your hospital environment or maybe your clinic environment, it goes through some sort of a cybersecurity breach, HIPAA can implement or can force you to pay a lot of penalty. Penalty plus prison time as well. And the penalty is pretty huge, to be honest. Okay, it can run in millions of dollars. Plus, obviously, there is prison time as well. Okay, so HIPAA compliance is a very, very keen challenge for healthcare organizations. We also have another very infamous framework that is super strict is GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. Hmm. This applies to European Union. Okay, it is not very old. It's less than 10 years old. Okay, it was adopted in I think in 2016 because European Union wanted to protect the data of its citizens. Okay, and GDPR is very strict. So GDPR, it really impacts all organizations that are established in the European Union or any businesses that might collect or store private data of European Union citizens. Okay, so even if you have a business in US, okay, you are headquartered in US, but you are dealing with European Union customers and the data is leaving the European Union territory, you have to comply with GDPR. Okay, and fines for non-compliance of GDPR, they're super high. Okay, so they can go as high as 4% of your global revenue, whatever your business is. Okay, a lot of times in the past, there have been businesses that fail to comply with GDPR, and GDPR fined them to such an extent that they had to shut down their businesses. Okay, they had to file bankruptcy and then they had to shut down their businesses because of the fines were so high that they really would not have been able to cope with it. Okay. Another one is PCI DSS, payment card industry. Okay, I'm pretty sure everyone uses some sort of a digital payment nowadays. Okay, obviously in India we have UPI a lot, phone pay, Paytm, those sort of things. Okay, the next time when you do a payment, okay, maybe through this, maybe through credit card, when you are on that checkout page where you have to put in your card details and everything, look at the very bottom of the page. It would say PCI DSS compliant always. Okay, so payment card industry data security standard. That's what it really stands for. And it is a set of security standards that is designed to protect the card holder's data. Okay, so anytime you're dealing with any business, any e-commerce, any retail business, for example, and you have to provide your card information or any sort of payment details, okay, there has to be some security standards implemented by that business to protect that data, that card data. Okay, so no matter you do your payments on Amazon or through any other e-commerce website, through any sort of other payment gateways, you would always see PCI DSS compliant being mentioned. Okay, and that kind of gives you a kind of assurance, the background that your data is protected. Okay, so these are some of the more common ones. These are some of the ones that you would see a lot being talked in organizations when you're trying to implement projects or implement policies for different clients. Then obviously within different sectors, right, you might have um, some additional cybersecurity frameworks as well. Okay, but these are some of the more common ones which you're going to see or hear a lot. Okay, so the takeaway from this would be to kind of go back and maybe read more about these, right? So for example, I talked about NIST special publication, right? So you should go back, see what NIST CSF special publications are. Okay? What are the different publications? What areas do they cater? Bookmark them. The next time maybe you're implementing some sort of a security policy or something, maybe you could reference that document and see what that document really mentions. couple of others that would be for very specific environments would be something like FDCI, that is for banking sectors, banking organizations. You have COBIT, you have FISMA, FERPA. Okay, FERPA is very unique. Okay, again, this is something for the US. Okay, um, FERPA is implemented in educational institutions, colleges, universities, schools, to protect the privacy of student education records. Okay, so it gives parents and students the rights to inspect, view, protect their records. Okay, so schools, institutes, colleges, they have to implement FERPA or whatever FERPA mentions to maintain security of such data. Okay, so I've given you lots of frameworks, consider it to be let's say your homework. Okay, to read through, go through them, bookmark a couple of them. Okay, these two are more essential. Okay, you would see these two a lot generically. Okay, and then if you're dealing with cloud and everything, then SOC 2 becomes important. Okay, these becomes important if you are in those specific verticals. Okay, or in those specific segments of the industry. Okay, again, HIPAA for hospital environments. These are something that you would rarely see. Okay, again, if you are a compliance officer, maybe, who just works with banking sector, then you would deal with FDCI a lot. Okay, and again, the goal is to not learn these by heart. Obviously, you won't be able to. Okay, so for example, ISO 27000, 20 documents. Okay, and each of those documents can run 20, 50, hundreds of pages, right? You're not going to mug up those pages. The goal is to understand what those standards are, what those standards define, okay, and maybe look at the difference. So maybe look at the NIST special publication for access control and look at the ISO document for access control, okay, and maybe see what are the differences between them, okay. Maybe NIST recommends doing access control a little differently than maybe ISO, or there might be overlap. There might be similarities between the two as well. Okay, so that thing kind of becomes your talking point as well with potential customers, clients, even internally as well. Okay, when you are dealing with a lot of different teams doing cross-functional work with other teams in your environment as well. All right, questions, anyone? So I've been talking for the past 1 hour. Any questions? Anything that doesn't make sense? Anything that anyone would want to, maybe comment upon? Okay, all right. We'll keep it short today. Okay, so since this is just the first session, okay, so we'll end it here today. Okay, just to give you, so this was mostly, again, just give you a more of an insight of how I go about doing the sessions. Okay. Again, I don't use slides, no books, no presentations or anything. Okay. Um, so whatever I speak of, it really comes from experience and from, you know, from memory. Okay. Um, so that's why if you kind of sit in two of my sessions, they both are going to sound very different. Okay. Because I mean, again, I'm not talking through some slides or anything. And then it also kind of keeps things interested. You're not being bored and just looking at the slides and me reading through the slides, for example. Okay, so next couple of weekends is typically going to be this way. Obviously, we are not going to do just 1 hour session, else the whole CCNP is going to take a couple of years for us to finish. Okay, so, and I think I mentioned this previously as well. So I typically aim to have anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours of sessions so that we cover substantial content over the weekend, and then everyone has the week, the following week to do your own study. Okay, maybe if you're doing labs, review the videos, go through the labs on your own. Okay, so 2.5 to 3 hour sessions. Couple of weekends, we're going to be discussing these theoretical concepts, the foundations. Okay, this is going to get a little bit more interesting later on when we talk about malwares. We take a look at some of the other things with respect to attacks and everything. Okay, so it'll become more interesting. Okay, but these are essential pieces as well. Okay, later on when we look at the products and solutions, a lot of times I might talk about a lot of these terms and terminologies. So I don't want everyone to be blank at that point and be like, hey, we don't really know what that word or that keyword really means. Okay, so it helps you build that foundation with respect to security. All right.
Yes, sir. Makes sense. So I have one question.
Yes.
Like, uh, I understood these are the different kind of frameworks we follow when we are implementing any
Mm-hmm.
kind of product in our environment. Suppose we are like implementing a Cisco firewall. So the Cisco itself, they follow this kind of framework when they are building their products, correct? Like the IPS policy or the malware vulnerability. These are the different model they follow with
They
this
give you
framework.
recommendations and best practices. Okay.
Hmm.
So for example, if you're implementing a malware protection policy,
Yeah.
okay. So per Cisco, what are the best practices of what options to tune in? Okay. What options do what? How does a firewall behave with respect to a particular policy or something? Okay. Now, when you take that firewall and that feature and you want to implement it in something like a healthcare environment, okay, that's when you take Cisco's recommendation plus you combine it with the HIPAA framework.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so that's how you build your compliant environments or compliant policies.
And the organization goes through the audit by the third party vendors whether we are following these frameworks or not.
Yes, so from an audit perspective, you can have internal audits as well as you have external audits as well. Okay,
Yes.
so
Okay.
internal
Good.
audits will typically be, some sort of a compliance officer or something that you might have, or your infosec team, right? They would run yearly audits to making sure that whatever your infosec policy states, your employees, your environments are basically complying to those policies. And then you also bring in external parties to run the audits as well. Okay,
Okay.
so if you are in a healthcare environment, then you would bring in some auditor who would be auditing your environment per the HIPAA framework.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, for SOC 2, that is a framework as well as a certification that it gets. Any environment that is dealing with protecting the client data, SOC 2 does the auditing for those environments before stating that, hey, this organization is SOC 2 compliant. They are implementing all the security features and functionalities to protect the client environment, and they're compliant as per our policies.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
yes, auditing is
Yeah.
a very essential part. Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I mean, I can hear you. Okay, I think you might be having some audio issues. Anyway, I mean, if you are hearing me, please just add your question to the chat window. And he's messaging me just a second. Yes, in the meantime, if anyone else has any questions before we end it for today.
Yeah. Okay. My question is there any reference for the standards which you have mentioned, so we can go through it? Any link or something?
So, I mean, Google is your friend. Okay, so so each of these frameworks, they have their own individual websites. Okay, so if you're gonna go online and type in NIST CSF, it's gonna redirect you to the NIST website. Similarly with HIPAA or similarly with any of the other standards. Okay, so there is not a one-stop shop for where you can access everything, but each of these individual frameworks, they have their own individual websites, their own individual organizations um, which are maintaining them. Okay.
Thank you.
All right then, guys. Thanks for joining in today. Okay.
Thank you,
And
Arun.
I'll see you guys soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.